Thanks, Ian. Good evening, everybody. Yes, my name is Matt Bryan. I'm the registrations project manager, and I led the implementation of adult play registration. And as Ian says, tonight is for those who are specifically new to adult play registration, either since we launched it around about this time last season, or whether you've just been recruited as a result of a recent AGM, or indeed, as Ian says, if you're after a refresher. If you do want wide access to wider adult play registration topics, so if you are a bit more experienced and you are looking for a refresher, you might get some points out tonight, but then also keep a lookout towards the end of the deck where we will also let you know of other webinar opportunities. So yeah, why are we doing adult play registration? I'm sure it's a question people ask a number of times, and the idea and the medium term benefits, because we recognise that this will take a little bit of time to embed for our players and indeed for our volunteers, there are a couple of key things that we're looking to get out of it as a benefit. One, in the medium term, recognising the crucial and incredible role the volunteers played last summer in helping us to roll out adult player registration. But in the medium term, to getting players taking care of their registrations to reduce that volunteer admin, those admin tasks on the volunteers. Again, recognising that might take a little bit longer to realise that benefit. And also for it, so we can better understand the health of the game. So we think it's a fair challenge that when people come to us as the national governing body, we should have a pretty clear understanding of the number of registered players that we've got. And around about 12 months ago, we didn't really understand that anywhere near to the level of detail that we are already starting to understand. We're going to cover some of the key processes tonight. We won't cover all of them. And as I said, if you want to do look at the more extended processes, then book yourself on one of the remaining webinars and/or take up the offer of the links that Ian will post into the chat later on into the webinar. We'll also be touching upon that exact topic there when we look at the support and resources available for our registrars. What we're trying to do is essentially continue to embed adult player registration, but then ultimately around from now until at this point next year is ultimately move on and support the game better with the data that we're now starting to be able to see. So we can see player habits a lot more better now. We can understand our players better, a lot better than what we could this time last season, but we've still got some way to go. So the idea is that for last season was the rollout and was a big effort from the whole game, which we're massively appreciative of. But ultimately, we do want to move forward, over the next 12 to 18 months and beyond, and start to realise the benefits more of adult player registration as we move beyond the bedding in period. That ultimately is what we want to share with all of the game and provide people with. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Ian, or back to Ian, who's going to talk you through permissions, levels, and roles, particularly for those people who are new to adult player registration. Ian.
Awesome. So you might know this, you might not know this, but ultimately, as a individual in a club, you will need a permission level to perform tasks. So if we're focusing in on adult player registration, the permission level best suited for a registrar, and there's two options. There's an option to have an adult male registrar role and an adult female registrar role, but the permission level would be level 3. A person in your club could assign this level to you, and they would need to be a permission level 5 holder. So that would usually be your honorary secretary at your club or your club's data officer. So that's who to ask if you think you do not have the required permission level. If we just flick on that, then the first place to go is golden role holder. Will be able to support you with that role, like I just said. So the ONSEC, the data officer will definitely have those level 5 permission levels. If you just flick on one more, they will go to a module called the organization admin, and they can see who has the relevant permission levels within that club. So to be able to do the role of registration, you need to be assigned the role of adult male or female registrar and have a permission level of level 3 or level 5. You can only have one permission level. So if you've got level 5, then that's cool. You'll be able to access it as long as you have the role assigned as well. And then if you've got level 3, that's suited to you. So to add those roles, and just how that works is on the left-hand menu there, on the people menus, they'd search for your name. They would go click on find you, click on roles, and then you'll see on the right-hand side there's two options: add role, view permissions. Select one of them, and they can be added to your profile. There's one more slide, Matt. There we go. And as you can see on the left, we've added the role of adult male registrar there. And then as we move on the right, you then asks you to add the permission level. You click add, and there's a bit of descriptive text at the bottom there saying best suited to registrars. So if you're brand new, you've got no other roles in the club, then that would be the best permission level for you. Pretty simple process. It's probably a 5-minute task for the volunteer data officer to assign this to you. And if they're unsure to do it, then you've been watching and you know what to do. So there were also articles on Community Rugby Help to support any volunteers that need help or have never done this in their club before, and they need to do this particular task.
Okay. Yeah, do keep putting the questions into the Q&A function, and yeah, we'll get through those throughout the session. Back to me then to cover the levels within the game and the registration types. So we've got the men's pyramid here essentially, and at RFU levels, or what we call league levels, so you'll either see them referred to the actual names of the leagues that you will see in the middle of the pyramid illustration there, or you may, in like an old money reference to put it that way, you may see them or hear of them referred to at levels. So any player who wishes to be eligible to play at levels 1 to 8 in the men's game requires an RFU registration. And as you'll see, there's a couple of components to that. If it's a non-contracted player, then it's a much simpler and quicker process. But as you would expect, if you have people who are going into contracted status, then employed and paid to play, then things like agents and right to work and things like that become involved. But essentially, the best rule of thumb to start with is anybody playing level 1 to 8 is required to be RFU registered, which we'll take you through shortly. Anybody playing what we call below these levels, so level 9 or counties 3 and below, all of those players require is what's called a club registration. And indeed, any other levels that are below this that aren't an RFU league. So, for example, if you've got a men's 2nd, 3rd, 4th team or whatever that might be, that doesn't play in any of the RFU leagues, but might play in Merit League or Merit Table Rugby, might just play in a vets tournament once a month, or may play in a county cup competition, then they too would only need club registration to play at those levels. You can play at these levels as well if you are RFU registered. That's not an issue. But if these are your ceiling levels, so counties 3 and counties 4 and counties 5 and below, then club registration is all that's required for adult males playing the game. For the women's side of things, they too have got the competition pyramid, and the levels there, the illustration is exactly the same. Name of the competition down the middle, and then also the levels 1 to 6 down the left-hand side. If you're playing levels 1 to 4 in the women's game, you need an RFU registration. If all of you are going to play as level 5 and 6, so Women's National Challenge 2 or National Challenge 3, or the likes of in a Warrior Series, then it's club registration type for those players. That's all it's needed. And again, RFU registered players can also play down at those levels as well. The process that players will be going through. So any player with an active registration on or before the 22nd of June this year will be going through what's called a renewal process. And I can see one of the attendees, Simon, who was also on the previous webinar, asked a question around this, around what players will need to do to be able to be registered to play. So anybody with an existing registration on or before the 22nd of June, they will go through what's called a renewal process. And we're going to show you what that looks like now. Bear with me.
This video will show previously registered players how to renew their registration at their club.
Sorry, guys.
If you've played club rugby in England before, you are likely to already have a GMS account. To renew your registration, log into your GMS account. Enter your registered email address and password. If you don't know your password, click Forgot Password.
Sorry, I'm getting a sound alert on my side here. Just let me click and get rid of that and I'll restart.
If you do not know your registered email address, contact your club registrar. They can look it up in GMS and provide it to you. Once you are logged into GMS, click the profile icon in the top right corner and select your personal dashboard. Make sure the club you want to renew your registration for is displayed below your name. Next, click the Renew Player Registration Adult button to renew your registration. Review the details of your club registration form, add in any medical details and emergency contacts if needed, and decide whether you would like to consent to the waivers. Click Save or Submit. Your registration is now automatically approved and renewed for the season. If you are a contracted player, you'll be required to log in again and approve your contract. You may also need to log in and add attachments, such as a copy of your passport, visa, or student and service pass if applicable.
So that's the extended process there for players to complete. And for the vast majority of players, their details are unlikely to change. And they will simply hit renew and then go to the form and scroll to the bottom and submit. What Ian has taken you through there in a more extended process is just highlighting all of the points of that. So typically for players, it'll be around about a 30 to 45 second job. So that is any player that has an active registration on 22nd of June on or before. That is the process that they will be going through, and they will go straight to approved, which I did see there was one question on that earlier. So, and the logic there being is that the registrars have already approved them previously, so why would we want our volunteers doing that again? So anybody with an active registration who's already been approved, they will hit renew, and then they'll automatically go to approved. For those, I'm just going to reshare my screen here. Just bear with me a second. I've got the odd little technical issue. Bear with me. Ian, can you see the slide again?
All good.
Thank you. Thanks for bearing with me there. I'm just having a couple of issues with some sound. In terms of those players who are going to register for the first time, so what we're going through there is a renewal process, and as we said, that essentially jumps past the approval stage because registrars have already done that. If you've got players who are coming in and registering for the first time, so typically that will be age grade players who are coming out of age grade rugby into adult or senior rugby, then this is the process that you will go through as registrars.
This video will show club registrars how to approve player registration requests. You will need to have been assigned the role of adult male or adult female club registrar with a permission level of 3 or 5 to complete this task. Once logged in, navigate to Pending Players on the right-hand side of the screen. Select Pending Senior Men's or Senior Women's registrations, depending on your registrar role. This will show you all players with a pending status. Check the details of the pending players and approve those who play at your club. Those players will now be club registered. If your team plays at level 9 and below in the men's game, or level 5 and below in the women's game, the registration process for your players is now complete. If your team plays in men's level 1 to 8 or women's level 1 to 4, you will need to uplift your players to an RFU registration. You can find guidance on how to do this at help.rfu.com or in the How to Uplift Players for RFU Registration video.
Which unsurprisingly is exactly what we're going to go on to next set. David, thanks for your question. I'll just go through the next slide and then I'll come back to your question in the question and answer function. So Ian referenced there at the end that if your players require RFU registration and they've already either done the club registration and you've approved them, or that you've taken on board a new player and they've been approved by yourself, this is the process that they will go through in RFU registration and how you will apply for that.
This video shows club registrars how to uplift their players for RFU registration. This applies to teams playing in men's level 1 to 8 and women's level 1 to 4. Log in and click the 9-grid icon in the top left-hand corner. Select Player Management. Click Registration Overview from the side menu. Next, click Approved Registrations beneath Club Registered. This will show all players that have their club registration approved but are not RFU registered. To find a player, scroll through or search for them using the filters. Select the player and click Apply for RFU registration. Complete the form when the player's profile appears on the right-hand side. Some fields will be pre-populated with information the player has provided. Check the information is correct and add any missing information. The details required will vary depending on the level of the applicant club. Under Player Contract Information and Agent Declaration, tick whether the player is amateur or contracted. If the player is contracted, input the relevant contract details. If an agent was involved with the contract, declare this by ticking the box and typing the agent's name. All RFU licensed agents' details will appear once you begin typing. If the agent does not appear, please contact your RFU registrar. Next, make sure the player has uploaded all required documents. If you're not sure what is required, visit help.rfu.com for more guidance. Club registrars can upload any missing documentation required to prove an individual's eligibility. To do this, save your progress and click on the player's RFU ID. Under Attachments, click New and upload the relevant file. You can also request that the player do this themselves. Finally, click Submit. This player's RFU registration will enter the relevant approval process. If the club needs the player to play within 7 days, see the How to Expedite a Player's Registration video.
I hope that was clear. And what you've seen there is all of the kind of extended processes of an RFU registration. So for the vast majority of players, and we're talking about those aren't contracted, it is those earlier steps only. So what you've seen there are the extended steps where some players will need to be fully RFU registered if they're contracted. So yeah, please don't think that you've got to do all of those because you haven't. Before we go on to kind of player approval status, got a couple of questions in the chat there, and I can see that you've answered Simon a couple of times, Ian, but I'm just going to pull that out just to hopefully get some clarity on it as well. And thanks for answering that a couple of times. So any any player with an existing registration, regardless of registration type, if it's club registered or RFU registered, if they've got one of those registration types on the 22nd of June or before the 22nd of June this season that is active, then they will get a renewal required notification to renew their registrations. The only registration types which aren't up for renewal, and there's no change on these, and this has been the case for a number of years now, is if there's anybody such as players on loan, for example, those get straight cancelled as they have done pretty much each year. Dave has got a question there. David Page, thank you. If a player has been registered with another club at level 8 or above, I presume that is, and wants to join another club at level 8 or above, do we need to release from the former club? So they'll need to do a transfer. And we are aware that this caused a little bit of confusion last summer. And the reason that we need to get players to renew their registrations is actually it's for legal purposes, which I won't go into any great detail at the moment. It is actually linked to contracted status of some players as well, but there is a reason that is behind why we do the renewal required and not a straight make them inactive. It was a bit tricky to manage last summer for the game. We understand that. And the main reason for that is that we were dealing with over 21 years worth of, in some cases, poor quality registration data. So if you had a player that, let's say, had been registered 15 years before and had then could have moved clubs several times, then that player, of course, probably never even heard of GMS, wouldn't know they had an account and certainly how to log into it. But because that was done on their behalf by registrars back at that time. So we have done a big purge in essence of that 21 years worth of data. What we did was anybody who didn't renew their registration by their respective transfer deadline date, so typically for the vast majority of in the male game, that was the first week in February, and for the women's, it was the fourth week in February. We then turned those players to inactive. So if you've got a player that you're dealing with who for whatever reason didn't renew their registration this season but had one from 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, they will not need to go through that renewal process if they move in clubs. So if they just want to join a club different to when they had a registration, however long ago that was, they'll be able to register afresh. So yeah, they will need to renew their registration, David, is a long answer to a short question, and then you'll be able to search for them and transfer them in, which we'll cover later on. Joe Griffiths, how long does it take to go RFU registered? That will depend. So if it's internal and if you're working with a club registered player in your club and you want to make them RFU registered, the effective from date or the valid from date will be the next day. If you are working with a player that's been transferred in, then that is baked within the regulations a 7-day wait period, and that's there for a number of reasons. But we'll cover later on, or within the supporting material, how you can expedite that and quicken that one up. So, thanks for both those questions. Back into the getting players of the RFU registered. For those players who are on contracts, then they will need to make sure that they are approving their contract, and we'll show you how to do that now.
Sorry, Matt, this next one is tracking.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, it's doubled up here. Here we go.
This video will show clubs how to track the status of RFU registration applications on the Player Registration Overview dashboard.
My apologies. So what this one is having a look at the status of players' registrations and the expedited, which I talked about just a couple of minutes ago.
RFU registrations require approval from an agent if they are involved. If no agent is involved, the player will approve. Once contracted players approve the contract information, RFU registrars review the registration. Clubs can apply for submitted RFU registrations to be expedited if they require the player to be registered in a period of less than 7 days. To do this, select the player from the Registration Overview dashboard and make the request. Input your card details in the payment portal. Once you have paid to expedite the RFU registration, this will be reviewed by an RFU registrar. The player will remain in the approval process flow on your registration overview dashboard, and the request will be prioritised by an RFU registrar.
Now we're on to player contract approval. So this is what players will see if they are contracted. So these will be the players who have gone through the extended processes or have needed to go through the extended processes because unsurprisingly they're contracted. They will need to approve their contract within GMS. So as the players log on, they will be presented with their dashboard. And what you'll see pop up bottom right is a notification and a task asking players to approve their contract. And they're able to do that by editing their registration and working with the menu options which pop up on the top right hand side of the page there. The players can then scroll down through and go through any parts of their registration to check them should they wish. Typically, they're going to be going to the contracted parts of the registration, unsurprisingly. They can check those details, work through them all, and then ultimately they can click on approve, and they can reject it if it's incorrect, of course, but they will click on approve, and then that will approve their contracted status. Then you will see that bottom right here, you will notice that notification has now gone, and it's a task that the player has now completed. What we'll have a look at here is when the RFU registration goes to an RFU registrar, so for any contracted player, so if no agent is involved, if the player is completely amateur, it does not go to an RFU registrar per se. If they are contracted, an agent's involved and they're paid to play, then it does go to an RFU member of staff who's a registrar. And as a registrar within your club, this is typically what you would see the process go through. So you would first of all see them in pending, so they'll be down as pending RFU registered. Then once that player has been approved by an RFU registrar, they will go unsurprisingly to approved. And then what you will see is when you click on that approved registrations, it will drill through to a list of players, and then you'll then be able to see the valid from date there for that player. That's once a player has been fully approved by an RFU registrar and ready to play. I'm just going to take some questions there. Lisa Dole, thank you for your question, Lisa. Do all RFU registrations need paying for or just to expedite them? No, definitely do not. I know some sports do that, but we absolutely don't do that. It's only expedited registrations that need paying for. Yeah, definitely want to be massively clear on that one. There's no costs for registering a player whatsoever. The reason that there's costs attached to expedited registration, and if you're new to registration, you might not be familiar with that, is because even though it shows within the process that it looks as if it's automated, it's actually semi-automated. We still have staff, indeed casual staff and full-time staff, who will do the checks and balances that are needed on expedited registration. So within regulation, one of the reasons why a 7-day wait period is there is to check that a player doesn't owe any debt, doesn't have a disciplinary issue or whatever that might be from the club that they're leaving. So those checks are done manually by a member of staff or a casual member of staff before they're able to then join their next club. So once that transfer has been approved, you're then able to expedite that registration, but definitely not paying for registrations per se. We're going to touch on transfers now, and this is probably a bit more of an exciting one for us because it's where if you are familiar to some extent with adult player registration, you may notice some changes here, but if you are attending the right webinar and you're completely brand new to it, then it might be the first time that you see this part of the process. So to transfer a player, so what we mean by transferring a player is once they've been registered at another club, and once they've got an active registration at another club, you will be able to transfer them into your club subject to approval from the side that they're leaving there. We'll show you some of the new enhancements here as well. You would click into player management, and what we're working with here, because the the new improvements will be delivered ready for the 1st of July. What we're working with here is a little bit of what the current system looks like, and then also a bit of what the new system looks like. So if there's a little bit of a difference in layout in between the slides, and that's the reason for that. You'll be in player management, and then you'll see the menus expand on the left-hand side there, and unsurprisingly, you would click transfers. This then shows you a list of transfers that you've got ongoing at the club, and in this instance, there aren't any. And then what you'll see top right is a button which says Request Transfer. Now, for those of you who are more familiar with the transfer portal in terms of what it looked like last season, or this season rather, this is what it's changing to for this coming season. So we've moved away from date of birth being mandatory, because that can be a trickier a more specific piece of data that could be tricky to get hold of sometimes for registrars from players. So you will need to put in 2 of any 4 of these data search fields. You need to put 2 of any 2 of any of these 4. So if all you have is a first name and surname, then you can put that into the search boxes there. If you do know the RFU ID of the player, or if they do know the RFU ID of themselves, and few do at this stage while we're still in that embedding period, then you can use that also, and that's obviously going to get you straight into the player, because RFU ID numbers are unique to each player. And the difference is, if you are familiar with what you would have seen this season, is that this now returns all players regardless of their status. So the season that we're currently in, because for us the season runs till the 30th of June, if you were transferring a player, you would only see players returned if they were active elsewhere, because to be eligible for a transfer, you've got to be active elsewhere. And what registrars told us was that was frustrating. They couldn't see the players. They couldn't then tell the player what they were needing to go and do. So in this case, we've searched for David Brown, and it returned all the David Browns in the country, regardless of their status. And in this case, you'll see all of them just happen to be inactive. So what would happen here is, for a player to become eligible for a transfer, they would need to be active elsewhere. And what we've got baked into the system now are, I think it's 54 new pop-up banners, which will tell you when you hit a little bit of a roadblock on those few occasions that you do, what you should be able to do next, and then when to get support from. So as you can see there, that player can't be transferred because they haven't got an active registration, and to be transferred, you need to be active elsewhere. It tells you that because they're inactive, they should just register afresh with your club, which an inactive player is able to do. And then embedded into that banner, there's a hyperlink which will signpost you to the support there, which you can then pass on to the player to help them to complete that task. So that will return all players. If David Brown was active, you would click on David, and it would just take you through to the player being transferred. So hopefully, for those who are familiar with the system as it currently is, we'll see that as an improvement and an enhancement going forward. What you'll also see on the bottom right-hand side there is you will see some notifications as a registrar. There are a number of things that can pop up there when it comes to the transfer or the transfer status rather. That's obviously a transaction between 2 clubs. So if you are the club where the player is moving from, you've essentially got 2 options as a registrar. You could either approve them, and then that would allow the player to then be expedited potentially. And just to reiterate on the 7-day wait period, it doesn't matter if the club where the player is moving from approves it or not. The 7-day wait period clock starts ticking as soon as that player's been gone into the transfer process. Or if for whatever reason the registrar from the club where the player is moving from isn't able to get round and go in to complete these notifications and these tasks within here, then that after 7 days, that transfer will automatically go through. But just to be clear, that 7-day wait period is the clock is ticking and the meter's running on that as soon as that the transfer is pending and up and running. So the registrar where the player is moving from, they can either approve that, or if for some reason they're on holiday, they're not able to get to it, after 7 days, that transfer would automatically go through. Which we can see here. Got the transfer request. Click on that transfer request from the notifications in the dashboard. You then expand the details up top right there of the actual transfer details. You'll then also see some details expanded there, previous registrations for the player, and then click approve or reject if you want to, of course, for any valid reason. And that would be how you would approve a transfer. You'll see that they've gone off the list there for processing, and then you'll be able to see there that notification. You've got a player update there, and that's been that player transfer task has been removed from the dashboard there. Thanks, Jeff. Commented upon the style of my top. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's yeah, it's just one of the many things that perks of the job that we get some kit at. But I must admit, this one is a little bit more lairier than normal today. That's for sure. Thanks, Jeff. What we're looking at here is the sorry, excuse me. We've got the player update. And then what we'll see here is that player, once that transfer has been processed for them, they will come into your club as club registered. You will see the date that has happened. And then should you want to progress that registration for that player to RFU registration level, then you will go through the process that we showed you earlier in terms of uplifting players to RFU registration. I'm just going to nip through here now, Ian, and go on to key dates and communication. So what we will have is on the 23rd of June. So as I mentioned, any player that's got the 22nd of June have got an active registration either on or before the 22nd of June. 23rd of June will be when we'll essentially close the adult player registration portal off. And that will be when we'll start to do all of the releasing of the improvements into the live platform of GMS. And it's when we'll also change all of the player statuses who have got active registration to renewal required. So from the 23rd of June, essentially, you will not be able to do any adult player registration activity. We'll be doing the season switchover on the 1st of July. So that'll be the Tuesday of the following week. What you may see, and that's mentioned in the community game update, which goes out tomorrow. What you may see is some of the new enhancements and some of the processes come out and live into the system before that. That is a part of the process. It's what we did last year. Some of you were eagle-eyed there. We will start releasing the new improvements in there, but we do advise and indeed ask you not to do any of the registration tasks until at least the 1st of July, because there is the potential that as we still work with the release of the new enhancements, that you may then need to do the process again. But we give you the guarantee that from the 1st of July, everything will be up and running and completely ready to go. At that point, all players and all registrars will be able to go in and carry out their player registration tasks. So whether that's players renewing their registrations or whether it's a registrar starting to go in and potentially perform some transfers. From the 7th of July, so that's the following Monday, and this is one of the benefits that we're starting to realise down to the rollout of adult player registration, is that we will start to notify and send emails to players prompting them to register. So hopefully sharing that admin task with our valued volunteers and getting our players, nudging the players from the centre, if you like, to get them to renew their registrations. That will start from the Monday and will go throughout the whole of the week. And it's going to be sent out in order of the players who need to go through the more in-depth processes. So, for example, contracted players, where agents are involved and those types of players, and also those where their competitions start the soonest. So don't be surprised that if you hear of some clubs in the country or you see some things online where players have received a notification email to ask them to renew their registration on the 7th of July, then you may not see your players' registrations, depending upon when your competitions start, until much later in the week. But don't worry, they will be on the way. And in terms of one of those benefits, I think it was this time last year, we were only able to contact I think it was 34% of our adult players, because we didn't go through the data quality exercise and all the the exercises and the processes that we needed to go through. We're now able to contact 87% of the players with an email, And in terms of the type of journey that they will go through, they will get up to 6 notification emails to renew. And at any point where a player comes off that process, they will not get another nudge to renew. So if, and hopefully, they registered after their first email, they'll not get a second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth. If they aren't renewing at any point across this this continuum, they'll continue to get notifications right up until that sixth and final nudge to do so. So we'll continue to nudge the players, and hopefully that will give a little bit of time back to the volunteers. Appreciate that players can need chasing for a lot of things at times. Maybe it's not just registration, but possibly membership and events and things like that. But hopefully this will help with that little bit of support from the centre to be able to do that. Once they come out of the registration journey, they will then go into the really exciting part, which is where they'll start to get welcome journey emails, which will be supporting players with content that will hopefully support them to be able to play more frequently. So it'll be tips on how to carry out certain kind of skills and techniques within the game. But then also ultimately, as we get further into that welcome journey, they'll be able to access content which might support them to play a little bit more, a few more games each season, such as injury prevention, material and resources and things like that. So hopefully we'll all start to realise this is a benefit now. We're able to have that digital relationship with players. We can send them content which can support them to help them to play for longer and hopefully help with that all important club sustainability piece. Ian, support and resource.
Thanks, Kirk. Awesome. So resources to support you guys then. So Matt's just outlined the communications, so we won't go through that, but clearly that's there to support you as volunteers in encouraging those players to renew their registration or to register to play. So key area is around that. The next place is a place called Community Rugby Help. Now, if you're new to volunteering, you may not know this exists, but it is help.rfu.com, but it is essentially a place where you can go to access information around adult player registration, but also a whole host of anything to do with your rugby club, essentially. You can also submit any tickets here to the technical queries that you have around adult registration or GMS in general, where you may be struggling to do something. We have a team of service desk agents to support the game, and we always uplift the amount of service desk agents we have to answer queries during what is our peak period that starts from that July onwards through and peaks and the first weekend in second, third weekend in September. That's our peak. So we do have that resource available, so please do utilize that. Now, some of the videos that you've seen tonight are embedded into the key articles that are found on Community Rugby Help around those key processes for adult player registration. So it's worth having a look, depending on what you're trying to do. It is quite intuitive. You can see there's a search bar in there where you can type in what you're trying to do, and the relevant information will pop up. So we've done lots of work to make that as user-friendly as possible. And where those videos and webinars, such as the one that you're on right now, are housed, are on our Community Rugby Digital YouTube channel. We actually have an adult player registration how-to video playlist, so worth checking those out. There's some good videos there to also support with messaging for players. Some of those videos will be getting updated over the next few weeks ahead of the season switchover. So we will communicate accordingly once they are available. And then we also have a team of 7 GMS support trainers that work nationally across the country to support the game with GMS. They primarily do sessions to support club administrators online, virtually, but can be available for face-to-face on the odd occasion. But we probably deliver about 98% of those sessions online, which works really well for this topic, for GMS as a topic. So we have that team available there. That's for if you're really struggling around, you've watched the webinars, you've watched the videos, you've read information, and you just need that extra bit of guidance just to guide you on your way. That's what the GMS support trainer is for. And to access that, that resource, you can search it up on Community Rugby Help, or you can find that information on englandrugby.com. So it's in both those places. We're in the midst of our webinar program for adult player registration this month. We've already had 2 sessions. You may have been on one of them, you may not have. They are all recorded and available on our Community Rugby Digital YouTube channel. We've done a session specifically for players, but if you wanted to see what a player needs to do and want to get your head around that, worth a watch. Likewise, we've done a main session on admins. Those first 2 sessions there, players and admins, those sessions are repeated at the end of this month. And then we've just tonight run a pretty niche session for clubs that have been promoted and relegated. And we're obviously finishing our new volunteer understanding one tonight with you guys. So all recorded, all available. If you know someone that may benefit from watching, do share, but they're all housed in one place for you. Awesome. So I've got some top tips to share with you now. A couple of top tips to go through. So first one. So we're on the player management dashboard. So you need to get to this. You need to click on the 9-grid iron in the top left-hand corner and click on the player management module. That will take you to this dashboard. And what you'll see here highlighted in the red boxes, and we'll start at the bottom, is you'll see the last login of adult players. So you'll be able to see from your players at your club who has and who hasn't logged in, and you can click through on those links and it'll take you to those players. You could then select them and email them from within the system if you wanted to, or export that into whatever format you needed to. If we look at the box at the top that's circled and that's squared off in red around age grade players, that just highlights how many of your age grade players have graduated into adult rugby. So, and if you click through onto that, you'll be able to see that as a club. Just some useful bits that you may or may not know are there, but useful tools to help support you with the activity of registration over the coming months. The next top tip, which you may not know about, can be found in the organization profile module. So again, top left-hand corner of the screen, click on the 9-grid iron, click on organization profile, and I'm on the home dashboard. And to get to this part, you just got to scroll down to the bottom of your screen, and you'll be presented with some QR codes and some links. So you can either, and many clubs have done this, you could print them off, put a QR code on one of our digital assets that I shared in the chat earlier, put it up in the changing rooms. You could also send the links, the actual link in WhatsApp, Spawn, whatever way you communicate with your players, for them to access. But useful there. There's one for club brand new players that are registering to rugby for the first time. There's one that takes you direct to your club's dashboard. There's one that's for someone who needs to create a new account because they've never played rugby before or not been involved. And if your club chooses to use the optional functionality of memberships, then there's a link there to send them to the relevant membership schemes operating at your club, if your club chooses to use those membership schemes using the game management system.
Thanks, Ian. Just before I go into the final thing we're going to have a look at, I'll let you take that question from Jeff that's in the Q&A function there, if that's okay, Ian.
Yes. Is there any chance that the RFU GMS access can be turned into an app for ease of use? So it's a common question that we get. It is something that we constantly reviewing and exploring, but what I would say is that 75% of usage so far has been on a mobile over this past season, and all the player and parent tasks are mobile optimized within the system. So renewing a registration, as you're about to see in a second, is we'll show that in the mobile view. What I would say though is, if you are an administrator, I would advise using a laptop or something similar rather than your mobile when you're doing registration tasks, just because it's a bit more reliable. And obviously, if something so important as registration, you want to make sure you're getting that right. So I would advise that. Otherwise, you can may not be as smooth from an administrative perspective. So that would be my advice. But yes, in terms of an app, always reviewing and exploring this for the future. So we're just going
to last thing.
Oh, sorry. I can carry on if you want. We're just going to come on to renewing registration, and probably the key thing here is that I wanted to highlight to you, and top tip is the little arrows there. So this is the mobile view for renewing a registration for a player. So the player's logged in, the club there is Timeless Testers, and they've got an option there to renew their player registration. They've got two options actually, the big green box or under the quick links where it says renew registration. So what the arrows are there is to check that that player is in the right organization. So if you click on those arrows, then what you'll see is another organization. So in this example, this particular player happens to be a part of, or has been a part of, Betelgeuse RFU and Jelly Bellies. And probably the key bit there is just making sure that the player that is in the right organization that they're renewing the registration for. And then as we click over to the right, once they've clicked that renew player registration button, then they're taken to a simple form that we can see on the screen here. It's just going to scroll down where the player can check their registration details. They can make any edits to any details that they may need to update, and then they submit that registration. Once they've submitted that registration, they are done. So you can see it's a pretty smooth task. One bit to call out, and that's pretty clear here and will help, is on the far left-hand corner, on the far left-hand screen, you'll see under Timeless Testers, there's a shirt and it's grayed out. When it's grayed out, that means that the player's not active. Okay. When it's green, that means the player is active. If it's yellow, so amber colored, then that player's registration status is pending. So probably just some top tips there that we got feedback over the last season, but we wanted to highlight for this season is just some key bits when looking at it on a mobile from a player perspective. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Ian. What I'll do is we've got a couple of minutes left here, and we've only got a small amount on this webinar here, so it's over to you guys. You can either leave and go and get some dinner, or go and enjoy the rest of your evening, or you can come off mic and ask some questions, or you can put some stuff into the Q&A function within the chat. So Ian and I will hang around for the next kind of 60 seconds or so to see if anybody's got any questions. If you are going to leave us, then hopefully you found that useful. Forgive my small technical issues this evening, but we got there in the end. Great. If there's no questions, then enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks for coming on. Thanks all. Oh, Jeff just got in there before I hit leave, Ian. He just got in there in time. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, hi Jeff. We're just exploring with the team. They're looking at the moment. So yeah.
Do you want to explain what the question is, Ian? Because that's in the Q&A function there. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to look at the membership card? QR not working. I'm not aware fully. The team are looking at this, but I'll pick this up and we'll chase that down, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff.
Right. Cheers all. Thanks very much for your time. Take care.